Texans currently a 1-point favorite against the Minnesota Vikings. It's gone from 3-1. I'm just going to ask the question. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots, it is S&L. Well, what is the Texans' biggest obstacle ahead, whether it's short-term, long-term? You're talking about a 2-0 football team that doesn't seem completely satisfied. What is the biggest obstacle ahead for the Texans as they head to Minnesota as a 1-point favorite?
It's Joe Mixon's health right now. I mean, I'd love to tell you it's the offensive line, but you could have the best offensive line in the world. If you don't have a running back that's worth a hoot, it doesn't matter. If Mixon's not healthy, I don't know who to trust. And I don't know that the Texans know who to trust either. I mean, Dameon Pierce gets hurt in practice late last week, not even active for the game. Cam Akers comes in. He has a couple of nice moments, but he fumbles the football when you should have put the Chicago Bears away. And then the other guy's Dare Ogunbowale. So it's like, who do I trust? Well, I trust Joe Mixon, but he's not healthy. Had an MRI on his ankle. Demeco Ryans is obviously going to play it close to the chest. We'll see. The practice report, the first one will be out tomorrow. We'll see if Mixon's there or not. But Joe Mixon's health is the current biggest obstacle. There's a list behind that, but to me, if they don't have Mixon, I don't know if they can run the football.
Yeah, and I think running the football, and as much as things change, they kind of stay the same, because I think this was the same obstacle for them last year. They insisted they needed to run the ball. At times it was okay. It was never really great. We saw it great in week 1. I think you got to reevaluate that, though, just because of what happened to Indianapolis with Josh Jacobs. Did the same thing Mixon did. So, there's a lot of reasons to feel much better about this Texans team. And I'm not saying that you don't, but as we ask the biggest obstacle and we look at this squad, it does feel like it's kind of the same with the Joe Mixon thing. And the other thing is, I think you got to play this smart with Mixon. I don't think you rush Joe Mixon back, because I think he is that important. And I think the fact that you neglected the backup running back spot the way that you did, I think you're kind of in a position where it's what you set yourself up for. So we'll see what it means. Did they turn into more of a passing team? We'll see. But
I'm not opposed to that, by the way. Like, they want to throw the football a little bit more. They want to throw it more on first down than they have been. Like, I'm not opposed to throwing the football a little bit more. At some point, they've got to be able to run it, though. And running the ball well is going to make some of that passing stuff a lot easier. I mean, you saw it against Chicago. You get into some second and long, third and longs. You got a decent secondary or good secondary like Chicago. They can really put some clamps on the Texans passing attack from time to time. So you're going to run the football at some point. But if they want to throw more, like, I'm fine with that. Get some of that short stuff over the middle to Diggs and Dell, and have it kind of operate as a run game a little bit.
Can I confess, though, one of my fears, though, this is really what I could see happening here. And you know where this is going. Does this mean we're going to get more reverses? Like, are they going to try to get creative with the way they run the ball? And I say that kind of jokingly. I saw that I woke up this morning to, I guess, kind of a thread where Mina Kimes was talking about them running on first too much against Chicago, which I agree. They ran the ball a little bit too much against Chicago, but against Indianapolis, I mean, against Indianapolis, it was actually a pretty decent balance of run throw on first down. They actually threw, I believe, 19 out of 29 times. They averaged 7.9 yards per carry and had a touchdown on first down runs against Indianapolis. So I don't look at that Chicago game as something that is going to be a trend for Bobby Slowik. But I fear that there might be a little bit more reverses. I also look at that Chicago game, and I kind of think that Bobby Slowik was trying to set some stuff up later on in the game. And I don't know, as an offensive coordinator, how you handle that, because we saw the wide receivers in the backfield. Mm-hmm. And I got to think that wasn't going to be the only time, and we were going to see some stuff happen. But as soon as Mixon goes down, you had the Mixon sweep, I think, for 16, and then you had another Dell sweep early on. I just fear that maybe they run more reverses now, and reverses just drive me crazy.
It would be so much better if you just had some confidence that this offensive line was going to be consistent on a week-to-week basis. Now, again, this is a Bears defense that we're talking about was best in football against the run last year. So maybe the offensive line from a run blocking standpoint bounces back in a big way, but you still got Cam Akers or Dameon Pierce back there, not Joe Mixon. And so, look, I know Akers had some nice moments of the preseason. He never played against any starters. Like one or two runs is nice. I feel like every running back in the history of football has got one or two runs in them. Can you hand the ball to Cam Akers 20 times? I don't think you can.
No, I don't. And if he's going to fumble inside the 5, they're not going to trust you as much. So that's another thing. I do think that Cam Akers is going to be the guy that gets the majority of the carries, even if Dameon Pierce is healthy. So there's that, and we'll see how he holds up as well. It is kind of a question. It's one thing to say, well, this guy's going to be RB2, but if you go into a game and it's like Cam Akers is RB1, how is he going to hold up? So it's familiar territory for the Texans. Very familiar.
What beyond the Joe Mixon's health, what would you say is the next biggest thing?
I think it's a little bit of the same with what we saw against the Colts. I think stopping the deep ball, I don't think that's gone away. I think that it was probably a little bit more difficult for Chicago to do. I think stopping the deep ball and the safety play and challenging the safeties, I don't think that goes away after 1 week. So I would say that that's still the same. They're going to stop the run. Like I feel comfortable at this point in saying that the Texans are going to stop the run. You're not going to gash the Texans in the run game. I don't know if that's a Demeco thing. I don't know if it's a personnel thing. It's probably a combination of both. They're not going to do that. But I do still think that they're probably a little bit vulnerable to the deep ball. And you look at the last week, like you can say that the Vikings ended up beating San Francisco because of one play, and it was a 97-yard touchdown to Jefferson that kind of changed that things. He's nicked up. He's day-to-day. We'll see whether he plays or not. He's been known to play hurt, but I would say the deep ball would be the other thing that I would say is a little bit concerning.
I almost wonder if we don't have enough evidence to say that this is the case, but I feel like they solved the deep ball with the pass rush, and that's sort of their hope. Maybe, hey, we don't have to cover all the time if Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson and Derek Barnett and all these other guys are taking the quarterback's head off every other play. I mean, I feel like that's like the long plays that they allowed against Indianapolis, the 60-yarder, the other big play for Pierce, the 54-yarder on the over the middle shorter pass to Doolin. Like that was week 1. The longest play they allowed was 27 yards, and that was one pass to Adunze. Yeah. So like I wonder if they solved the deep ball by getting pressure, and there's not going to be Allen in a couple of weeks, but the next couple of weeks, there's not a whole bunch of like quarterback extending plays and making something crazy happen. Like Sam Darnold's going to sit back there and he's got to be in the pocket. He's going to make something happen from the pocket. So I do wonder that. My thing after the health of Joe Mixon as the biggest obstacle is I'm not sold on this offensive line.
Like, no, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be.
Like the ability to protect CJ Stroud consistently, and he's gonna fix some of those issues. But the ability to protect him consistently, and then if Juice Scruggs isn't in there, that they clearly take a step down from what they can do as an offensive line.
2 steps down.
2 steps down for you. So I still have some worry about this offensive line long term, and I just wish we felt better about it. Because you've got some pretty nasty pass rushes on this schedule that you're going to have to deal with. And that's the thing that could derail this even more than Joe Mixon not playing and is if those 5 guys don't get it together.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have an elite offensive line. I think you can maybe have a good offensive line. You're not going to have an elite offensive line.
Where they need to be, like they just need to be above average. They don't have to. You don't have to be the best offensive line in football. You don't have to be the Eagles from 3 years ago or whatever. Like, just be above average.
We might get to a point where it's CJ saves all butts for a little bit, but you don't want to ask him to do everything. But I think that's where we're approaching. It is S&L. You can hear us Monday through Friday. You can see us right here on YouTube. We're on every podcast form from Spotify to iTunes. So be sure to subscribe to that. Be sure to subscribe to the channels. Tuesday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Reaction Monday, 8 to 10 a.m. And then 4 o'clock on Friday. Why? Because that's when the final injury report drops, and that's when you get a grasp of what's going on. And also practice reports throughout the day. Texans not practicing today. Appreciate y'all for coming through and spending your morning with us. We look forward to doing this on a daily basis throughout the year, not just during the season, throughout the year. Texans coverage right here, S&L, Landry Locker, Cody Stoots.
And if we're not on your podcast platform of choice, send me a tweet or an email and we'll get it on whatever podcast platform you use. But it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, pretty much wherever you get your podcast.
All right, so the Texans are now a 1-point favorite. They're -1 against the Minnesota Vikings. I got gassed up yesterday and I made a $200 bet on the Texans -1. Here's the reason why I actually like the Texans -1. I think there's a couple of things. First of all, I think if you actually look at that San Francisco game, as much as Brian Flores is being praised and everything, and it was great, you had Deebo Samuel banged up. They didn't have Christian McCaffrey, and sometimes this type of stuff happens in the NFL. You also had one play from Jefferson that really kind of allowed the Vikings to win that game. The other thing is, we hear Demeco Ryans talk about eating the rat poison and stuff. And while I don't think this team is going to buy their own hoopla and believe the hype, I do think the fact that Minnesota beat San Francisco is actually kind of a favor for the Texans, because if you were going to sleep on the Minnesota Vikings, and it looks like people in Vegas and people who are betting based on the trend aren't doing it, I don't think you're going to sleep on them after they beat the San Francisco 49ers, which is the place where Demeco Ryans and Bobby Slowik comes from. And I don't know if this happens or not. I don't think they would admit if it does. But if Brian Flores' scheme was as exotic and all that as a lot of media types are saying, I do wonder if Bobby Slowik kind of makes a call to his buddy who he learned under and worked for, and just says, hey, what do I need to be looking for here? Hey, on this play, did you see that? Like Demeco type of thing. So I think that the Vikings have the Texans' full attention. And I think there's just a certain element of seeing a team that runs your exact same scheme having a lack of success. It's kind of like the Cleveland playoff game last year, where I said, okay, it's almost a good thing that the Texans defense got torched, because now Demeco Ryans has a visual of what it looks like when you do it wrong. And they ended up going out there and just completely thumping them. I think they have the Vikings have their full attention. Anything can happen, obviously, but I like the Texans -1 here just because I don't think they're going to get caught sleeping. And I think that CJ Stroud is a lot better than Sam Darnold. It's really kind of just that simple.
Good coaching staffs like to have more input to create greater output. So the more you see the Vikings and the more you pay attention to some of the stuff that they were able to do, it's going to be easier to get after them for Demeco Ryans, because he's going to have to find some way to figure this out to slow down Justin Jefferson. I would think Jordan Addison's probably got a shot to be back. He was hurt with an ankle injury. They got this other guy who's not going to sneak up on anybody anymore, named Jalen Naylor. Like, you're probably not paying a ton of attention to him. Jefferson goes out of the game. Naylor has a good game. There's no Addison, so he's not like the no sneaking up on you is fantastic. And Demeco Ryans has shown his ability to refocus this team after victories. It didn't happen early in last season, but they were able to do it after tough wins. You know, like the Tampa Bay game, they were able to go on the road and take care of Cincinnati last year. So that's something that Ryans has showcased as a coach, that I have faith that they're not going to be overlooking Minnesota. Yeah, it's a divisional game next week. You don't look forward to the Jaguars. You take care of your business this week. So I like the mentality of this team. And hey, let's figure out if the Vikings can handle a little bit of success too. Like they're unexpectedly good. Let's see if they can handle some success.
You think when Jalen Naylor went on a date in college and he came back from the date, like, and met up with his boys at the bar, you think they asked him, hey, did you nail her?
Naylor hardly knew her.
It is S&L here. So, yeah, the 1-point betting line is interesting. I don't know that too many people are going to be taking the Texans in their survivor pool. Regardless of what, I think when we looked at this schedule earlier on, we were like, okay, this might be a bunny. This is the one that you expect to win. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a little bit gritty. Kevin O'Connell, I think, is a hell of a coach. Brian Flores is obviously a really, really, really good defensive coordinator. So I think it'll be a really good battle between these two. But at the end of the day, it's Sam Darnold. Like that's really what it's going down to for me. It's Sam Darnold. Like, it's the same thing with the Colts. Like, we sat here and we talked for 2 hours about Texans Colts, and there are some talking points. But at the end of the day, it was Anthony Richardson and it was CJ Stroud. That's really what it comes down to for me is it's Sam Darnold and you have Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter on the edge. Like, I think that there's a reason that Danielle Hunter is the most highly paid free agent of the Nick Caserio tenure. There's a reason that they invested so much in Danielle Hunter. I just think that it's going to be hard for quarterbacks to get comfortable with those two mofos coming off the edge.
Yeah, and that's how they built this team is let the front seven wreak havoc and make everybody else right off of that. And you got to see that against Chicago. Chicago's not the last team they're going to do that to. Like, they're going to do that to a lot of teams. Minnesota's got a little bit better offensive line. They got some guys that are pretty decent. They've had their tackles in place for a few years now and things like that. But that's fine. They're elite edge rushers. They're going to get to the quarterback. They're going to disrupt things. And Darnold's going to make a mistake too. Like, this is a guy that's going to make a mistake, and you got to capitalize off the mistake. So it was a bunny initially because you thought it was going to be maybe J.J. McCarthy. But obviously with his injury, he's not there. It's Darnold now. So one performance doesn't change my opinion of what Sam Darnold is. He's a consummate journeyman for the rest of his life as a football player.
Yeah. So it'll be a unique game. We go back to the noon schedule. So we're off the prime time. And then after that, if we want to just get like an early look, you got Jacksonville after that, which Jacksonville, they could be looking 0-3 right in the face. So I don't want to say that you can kill somebody in week 4, but if you win this Minnesota game and who knows what happens with Jacksonville, I don't think too many teams are going to start 0-4 and make too much noise.
I like how we're 30 seconds ago, we were like, don't overlook Minnesota. That's a pretty decent football team. And Landry's over here like, you can kill the Jaguars next week when they're 0-3 coming to NRG.
I'm just trying to play some chess, my friend. And I'm looking at the Jags having to go to Buffalo. And if you can win this game, hell, even if you lose this game, like if the Jags are starting 0-4, we got plenty of time to get to that. There's a chance you could potentially kill them if we want to get ahead of ourselves. I don't mind playing checkers and chess at the same time.
Well, the early part of this Texans schedule is very much how many wins can you put together to give yourself a little breathing room for if you have a misstep or when you have a loss somewhere else. Like when you looked at this schedule, when it came out in May or April, whatever it is May, when it came out in May, you looked at the front half of it and it didn't look nearly as daunting as the back half. So you put enough together in the front half, you allow yourself a little wiggle room. You know, I don't know that either of these first 2 weeks are ones that you feel like you got one that maybe you shouldn't have, or when you were playing the win-win, loss-loss game, you would have put either of those as a loss. I mean, I would tell you most Texans fans expect a 3-0 start, regardless of how good Minnesota's playing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you should because you really haven't played well. You haven't put it together, and I think you have full attention with what's going on with the Minnesota Vikings. So Texans a -1 favorite against the Vikings.
That week 3 on the road against Jacksonville, saw the chat mention it, but just the way things sort of clicked into place
last year
in week 3 last year against Jacksonville. I just wonder if maybe they're right around the corner from stuff clicking into place on offense again. It just hey, you need to get that out of your system, get through a couple of weeks, figure out what's working, what's not working. You know, Bobby tears up a couple of notes because he doesn't like the way this worked or that worked, and everything starts to click week 3.
But you know what happened in that game. You know what the big key was in that game. And I'm not talking about Andrew Beck's fluke-ass kick return. You know what was kind of a key in that game?
Well, I thought it was going to be Andrew Beck, but fill me in here.
Tank Dell got it going. And that brings me to the next question. Will Nico continue to dominate wide receiver production? Right now, I won't say it's been one-sided. Stefon Diggs does have a couple touchdowns, but Nico Collins is leading the league in yards. Joe Mixon said everyone's going to eat. Well, maybe everyone's eating, but Nico Collins has like a 25-ounce ribeye with a fully loaded mashed potato and a side and a nice bread. And Tank Dell's over there eating the kids' meal macaroni and cheese, and Stefon Diggs is over there with the chicken strips. So, yeah, everybody's eating, but everybody ain't eating the same. Nico Collins is dominating wide receiver production, which leads to this question on S&L. Will Nico continue to dominate the wide receiver production?
Yes, I believe he will, because he's the best wide receiver on the team. He gets open. They trust him to do everything from that offense, win from the slot, win outside, win down the sideline, win over the middle. They trust him to do everything. And the time that he doesn't, it's because somebody has effectively found a way to slow him down, and you want to get the ball to Dell, you want to get the ball to Diggs. I will be fascinated to see if there are plays called to specifically get Diggs or Dell going in this one. And they've
like that. Do you like that though?
Well, that's I don't know that works for everybody. I feel like it could work for those two guys though.
Okay, but should that be like a goal? I mean, you want to get the offense going. You want to click on all cylinders. Shout out to Dietology for swarming the super chat. You ain't never hate. Swarm. All three can lose this week. Petrie is a monster. I knew it. We'll get to the Petrie thing in a second and probably throughout the week. But does Bobby Slowik need to go out of his way to satisfy Tank Dell and Stefon Diggs?
But the way they do it, I don't know that it's, hey, call this play, the ball's going to Stefon Diggs. I think it's call this play, Diggs is the first read, see if you can get him the rock, because we like the way this play is situated for Stefon Diggs. You maybe just work a little bit more of those in there just to see if you can get something. You start to you notice something in the Minnesota defense. Oh, okay, they can't get Diggs, or they're having trouble with Tank. But they've got to get somebody besides Nico going. Like that, he can do it.
Yeah.
But you need somebody with him to do it.
No, I agree. I just don't think it should be like something where you're we go down the road and you're 3-0, you're 4-0. It's like, well, we really got to get this guy going, especially if you have one wide receiver who's leading the league in yards. Yeah, that's my thing, and I don't think that's a factor. I don't think Diggs and Dell are unsatisfied. And quite frankly, Tank Dell had a hell of an opportunity to make a massive play, and he's just unable to do it.
If he comes down with that, the box score looks a whole lot different.
But the other thing is you might have to find ways, just because you can't. It goes back to what we originally talked about. We don't know if they're going to be able to run the ball without Mixon. I don't know if they're going to be able to run the ball with Mixon, or how effectively that's going to be as you go back and look at that Colts thing. So it'll be interesting to see what it looks like. Is Nico Collins continue to be at the top of the league in yards? It's definitely worth keeping an eye on for sure. Yeah, 100,000%. This division, is this a raggedy ass division after all? Yesterday, I'm watching. I thought maybe this would be an underrated division. 2 weeks in, a lot of football left to be played. The NFC South, despite the Bryce Young situation, the NFC South looks like it might be a little bit underrated. Did we overrate the AFC South a little bit?
I did. Definitely did.
So you're ready to say that this is a raggedy ass division. That's where you're at.
Well, I just thought they were going to be, I thought they were going to be one of the 4 toughest divisions, and they're not. It's not going to be one of the 4 toughest divisions. It's going to be a bottom 2 division. It feels like. Indianapolis is a mess. I didn't expect that. I expected them to have some challenges, but they're a mess. The Titans, they've showcased through 2 weeks you can't trust their quarterback, and the Jaguars are the same old Jaguars. I thought with a different coach he'd be a little bit better. He's still the same dude. Yeah,
he's the exact same guy. There's been no progression. I still think the divisional games will be a battle. I don't see any gimmies here. It's not like you have a Carolina or something like that. I think it's going to be a battle when you face Tennessee. I think it's going to be a battle when you face the Jags. We already saw them with the Colts. But I don't know if those other teams can elevate their game consistently to be able to bring stuff. And the Jags are against the ropes. Like the Jags early on, they are against the ropes. If they do not win this week, you have a chance to knock them out.
And they're getting
no matter what happens with the Texans, you have a chance to knock them out.
They're getting Buffalo off of a mini bye and an extra day for Monday Night Football. It's going to be rough.
Yeah, and those are kind of games sometimes that the Jags find ways to win just because they're strange. But yeah, you have a chance to potentially knock them out. It is S&L here Monday through Friday. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots. Tuesday through Thursday, we go 30 minutes. Friday, maybe a little bit longer, depending on what happens with the injury report. Then reaction Monday at 8. My next question is very simple. Is Demeco a comic book character? I asked this question the other day, and I was dead serious about it. And I actually got text messages from multiple media types saying, hey, I wanted to know the answer to this question too. Demeco Ryans loses his voice after games, and then he shows up the next day, and he's just perfectly fine, and he has a full voice. So I just asked him for the remedy. Here's what Demeco had to say.
This is a non-football question. I think some people in here might find it valuable. What's your remedy to getting your voice back after you lose your voice? Because it was damn near 12 hours ago, and you couldn't even. What's the recipe for that? I'm trying a lot. I'm trying to get whatever I got.
Get whatever I got. I have a lot of try to get some rest. That's it. Rest and no yelling. I don't have to yell when I get home. They're all asleep. You're right. All right. Appreciate it, guys.
I'm dead serious. I think he thought I was being sarcastic. I really want to know.
It's funny you say that
I really
because
want to know.
Back-to-back Mondays, Jonathan Alexander from the Houston Chronicle sits next to me, and then Demeco comes in with a full voice. And I've asked Jonathan back-to-back times. I lean over. I go, what's his secret? How does he come back from this?
So I had Seth Payne message me and said, dude, I really wanted to know that. And then Branham did. And I had a couple of viewers. And I was just like, I really want to know, like, what is the remedy? Because the voice is kind of important in my profession and what I do. So, yeah, I really want to know. I'm gonna have to press him on that. No, I won't press him, but yeah. The other thing I've noticed, though, if we're talking about coaches, man, there's a lot of dumbass coaches in the NFL. We haven't had like a boneheaded moment from Demeco, and it's destined to happen at some point. But in a very it's not really a short time for a young head coach. Like typically, I think you would see something. We really haven't seen a ton of blunders. I don't know if it's because it's a well-oiled machine, but even last night with Nick Sirianni, the bit coaching where you decline the penalty and then you throw the ball and end up losing the game because you decided to throw the ball. There's a lot of dumbassery, for lack of a better term, with coaches, and we really haven't seen it with Demeco, and we haven't seen it with Slowik. Part
of that to me is just a comfort level with what they came into the game with. I feel like so many of these coaches get lost in the flow of the game and feel like they have to do this or have to do that. Like the Texans feel pretty comfortable with how they operate on a week-to-week basis, try not to get too high, too low. And there's job security too. Like you're allowed to mess up when you've had the success initially that Demeco Ryans, Bobby Slowik and company have had. Like you're allowed to mess up. That's a data point last night for Nick Sirianni getting fired. Like that's a big data point for later in the year in a team that has high expectations. So I think job security plays into it sometimes. And also sometimes these coaches are just idiots. Like sometimes they don't get it and they don't understand. Demeco Ryans, having been a player, I feel like helps a lot. And then Bobby Slowik, having been around coaching for basically his entire life, you can watch a lot of guys make mistakes.
A lot of these guys have been around coaching their entire life that do dumbass stuff.
But it's a combination of what. But Bobby Slowik grew up with a coach. Like not every one of these guys grew up with a guy who coached in the NFL.
Yeah, but there's a lot of these guys that have just been around the game their whole life that just do crazy stuff. I think it's a Madden thing. I mean, I'm dead serious. I think it's a Madden thing. I don't know how much Madden, like Shane Steichen running the ball on 2nd and 11. You can't do that. Like you're not doing that in Madden.
It's not a youth thing because it's distributed amongst old and young guys.
He must not. His parents must not let him play Madden. I truly think that this generation is smarter because of Madden, but we haven't seen the big mistake. It might happen. Still a relatively young coach, Demeco Ryans is. So we will see. It'll be really, really interesting. But to put a bow on the show as we head into tomorrow, and tomorrow Texans will be back at practice. We'll have your practice report. We'll get you ready for that. Maybe we'll get the verdict on Joe Mixon. Word is it's not that serious. But the biggest obstacle, we agree, is the Texans running the ball. More things change, the more they stay the same. The -1 is interesting, but Sam Darnold and Demeco Ryans, we do think he is a comic book character. Cody, appreciate you. Keep it going. I'll talk to you tomorrow at 9. I'll see you at practice as well. This has been the first all the time edition of S&L. Appreciate y'all, whatever the hell that meant. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Be sure to subscribe, like, right along on all podcast formats and right here on YouTube.